This guy is a criminal who just got out of prison. He was previously jailed for harassing a young girl. Not only that, but he also left her with a permanent disability, yet the court only sentenced him to 7 years. After serving his time, this madman even wanted to go after his victim again, believing that she was the reason for his downfall. Little did he know that just as he was about to strike, a mysterious figure dressed in black appeared. With his bare hands the man beat him so badly that his face was left unrecognizable. The criminal realized that this mysterious person was the one who maintained order and punished unrepentant criminals. But what shocked him the most was discovering that the person who had ruthlessly beaten him was none other than the calm and gentle police officer named Ji Yong. 12 years ago in South Korea, Ji Yong experienced unbearable pain when his stepfather in a drunken rage beat his mother to death. What made it even more absurd was that despite having a history of violence, the stepfather was sentenced to only 3 years in prison thanks to his mental illness and the fact that Ji Yong's family agreed to a settlement. As he left the courtroom, the stepfather gave Ji Yong a menacing look, silently threatening him. But whenever Ji Yong recalls that moment, he can never forget the pitiful image of his mother lying silently on the ground. From that point on, the seed of revenge was planted in Ji Yong's young heart. 12 years later, Ji Yong had grown up and finally had the means to take revenge on his cruel stepfather, who had recently been released from prison. This time the man had been taken to the police station after harassing a female passenger on a bus, thanks to the driver who reported him. However, after being released, the man returned to take revenge on the bus driver. In front of everyone on the bus, he beat the driver mercilessly. He felt no remorse and even blamed the driver for causing his troubles. The passengers, terrified, remained silent as the man threatened them, warning that anyone who dared to testify would meet the same fate as the driver. No one knew that this arrogant criminal had been secretly watched by a mysterious figure. The man noticed someone was following him but showed complete disdain, believing no one would dare touch him. Hearing that the criminal had no remorse, the mysterious man said nothing and directly punched him. Though using only his bare hands, the criminal was no match for him. The fight was over in no time. But the criminal who had brought this upon himself never imagined that the man teaching him a life-changing lesson today was none other than his own stepson, Ji Yong. Of course, compared to what his mother endured, and after 12 years of suppressing his anger, this beating was still far too lenient. However, Ji Yong's actions didn't stop after this successful revenge. Once someone begins to fight evil with violence, the only difference is between the first time and countless times thereafter. By day, he was an exemplary student at the police academy, fighting to uphold the law, but by night he hid in the shadows, becoming a vigilante who punished evil, protected justice, and used harsh methods to make those who bent the law pay dearly. Today, Ji Yong saw a news report about 2 thugs urinating in front of someone's basement window. When the male homeowner tried to stop them, the 2 thugs brutally beat him. However, because the area was remote and had no surveillance cameras, the thugs were ultimately acquitted. What was even more infuriating was that the 2 thugs continued to harass the family daily. While the man was in the hospital, they insulted his wife and child. Learning about this, Ji Yong went there that night, with his usual style. Wearing a hood and fighting barehanded, Ji Yong preferred to let his fists do the talking with scum like them. The mother and child inside the house heard the sounds of a fierce fight outside, which suddenly fell silent. When a wooden plank fell, they realized the 2 thugs had been beaten so badly they couldn't get up. Shortly after, the incident was reported on TV and Ji Yong could feel the gratitude of the family. This made Ji Yong feel that justice had been served, and from that moment on he couldn't stop. Having experienced injustice himself, Ji Yong wanted to punish even more those who evaded the law or managed to escape legal punishment. Before long, he set his sights on a cosmetic surgeon who, under the guise of performing aesthetic procedures, took the opportunity to assault patients to satisfy his own desires. Although he had been accused in the past, his connections allowed him to be sentenced to only 6 months in prison and released early. Even his medical license was not revoked. Having studied at the police academy for so long, Ji Yong understood that crime and the abuse of power are inherently linked. Therefore, Ji Yong raided his clinic at night to put an end to his depraved actions. The doctor, confused about what was happening, stepped forward to intervene but was grabbed by the throat by Ji Yong. Ji Yong lifted him up as if he were a chick. Then came a brutal beating from him directed at this beast of a man, ensuring that the doctor would never commit evil again. After injecting him with anesthetics, Ji Yong crushed his right hand, permanently eliminating his excuse to perform surgeries on others. Once the punishment was dealt, Ji Yong calmly removed all the surveillance cameras. However, he later saw on TV that the doctor showed no remorse and even claimed to be a good person facing a villain. At this point Ji Yong realized that for those vile individuals down to their very core only absolute measures could prevent them from committing evil ever again. However, what Ji Yong didn't expect was that his continuous violent punishments against evil would make him a hero in the eyes of the people. This also caught the attention of the media, which sought to create sensational headlines and give him a resounding nickname, the Enforcer of Order. Of course, Ji Yong's method of investigating crimes primarily relied on the internet, but the information in the news can be both true and false. Most of the time investigators have to verify the information themselves. Sometimes he also encounters individuals who genuinely regret their actions. For those who are not dangerous criminals who show remorse and have the potential for reform, Ji Yong will not take action against them. However, this very fact has led to nearly 2 weeks without any news about the mysterious hero known as the Enforcer of Order in the media. Due to the drop in viewership, reporter Mi Rio and the project manager decided to expose the identities of criminals whom the media had helped protect after their release from prison. From then on there would be no more privacy protections for the wicked. The first villain exposed was a despicable pedophile. He not only assaulted a girl but also fractured the victim's pelvis, leaving her unable to care for herself. However, this man used the excuse of mental illness to receive a mere 7-year prison sentence before being released, now enjoying his freedom. The revelation of this case drew countless criticisms from the public, leading to the formation of a group advocating for severe punishment against him. Yet even in the face of public outrage, the man showed no fear and calmly enjoyed his meal. Unfortunately, the residents of this building not only had to endure daily abuse and harassment, but also saw their property values drop by half simply because they were neighbors with the recently released pervert. This situation created a headache for the police. On one hand, they had to consider human rights, while on the other they needed to address the public's emotions. This chaotic situation, however, brought great joy to reporter Mi Rio. She believed that it wouldn't be long before the Enforcer of Order would appear to punish this criminal. However, the police anticipated the media's intentions and assigned personnel to closely monitor the criminal's every move. To their surprise, they still lost track of their target as the criminal managed to evade them. Fortunately, the police had prepared thoroughly to prevent the criminal from retaliating against the victim. However, they still didn't expect the criminal to be so reckless. Although the guarding officers detected him in time, they were unable to withstand his attack due to his body armor. Additionally, after being assaulted, the criminal fought back using a food container. He then delivered a knife strike that incapacitated the officer. Nevertheless, the resilient policemen continued to struggle against the thief. To their surprise, the criminal employed a trick commonly used by women in jealousy fights. He threw acid, rendering the officer completely immobilized. The noise outside had drawn the victim's attention. This inadvertently put the girl in the criminal's sights. Just as she was about to be taken away by him, the severely injured officer summoned all his strength and lunged forward, creating an opportunity for her to escape. But how could a weak girl possibly outrun a vicious criminal? This scoundrel truly had a warped worldview. Now he blamed the girl for causing him to become a criminal. When perpetrators shift the blame to their victims, they often use the law of the jungle as an excuse, claiming it is natural to continue victimizing others. Fortunately, just as he was about to strike, the order maintainer appeared. Ji Yong kicked him, causing the criminal to tumble down the stairs. He secretly attempted to throw acid in Ji Yong's face. However, Ji Yong, with his agile reflexes, skillfully dodged the attack. Thus began his official torment of the villain. Although Ji Yong was fighting barehanded against a knife, the criminal was no match for him. Ji Yong punched him so severely that his face became unrecognizable to his parents. From that moment on, the man truly began to feel fear. But he forgot Ji Yong's words. If he wanted to blame someone, he should blame the law for releasing him. And if he wanted to live, he obviously had to meet one condition: to write a letter of remorse so that everyone could feel his sincerity. When the police arrived, the scumbag had been beaten to the point of being unrecognizable and had stopped breathing. On the wall was his letter of remorse written in his own blood. The reporter rushing to the scene inadvertently crossed paths with Ji Yong, the order maintainer she had always been searching for. However, this time they brushed past each other. After this incident, the entire country reported on the order maintainer. The people regarded him as their hero and a nemesis to crime. However, this brought embarrassment to the police. Aren't they the ones responsible for ensuring the safety of the citizens and upholding the law and order? The higher-ups were extremely angry, demanding that this mysterious figure be treated as a criminal and arrested quickly. Even the professor, Ji Yong's teacher, was invited by the police to assist in the investigation, as he was also developing a criminal investigation system. He entrusted this important task to Ji Yong and Son Wook, his two outstanding students. They were unaware that Ji Yong was exploiting the professor's system to easily look up the past of criminals with records. This time he targeted a murderer. Old Seo, along with a teenage delinquent, broke into the former owner's house and brutally attacked the entire family of 3, including the 2 small children. After the incident was uncovered, the police caught the 2 criminals happily enjoying themselves in a bar. However, because the juvenile accomplice took the blame for Old Seo, he was only sentenced to 2 years in prison before being released. After his release, he showed no remorse and casually posted pictures flaunting his life of freedom on social media. To investigate this scoundrel, Ji Yong took advantage of the weekend break from school to go home and accepted his friend's invitation to a nightclub. Even his friends were surprised by his appearance. Ji Yong, who was always strict with himself, finally showed up. No one knew that while everyone was looking for handsome guys and beautiful girls, Ji Yong was there to monitor his target. However, due to his handsome appearance, Ji Yong was approached by many girls. Through their conversations, he learned that Old Seo was not only a regular at the nightclub but also a flower dealer in the area. Just knowing this made Ji Yong feel that he deserved punishment, not to mention that he was the mastermind behind the brutal murder of a family of 3. Therefore, Ji Yong quietly followed him and left a note on his car warning him to confess. Old Seo, feeling guilty, instructed his blonde henchman to call the number on the note. He soon discovered it was the number for the Busan anti-flower team. Realizing something was amiss, he hurried back to his hideout to prepare for escape, only to find that his hideout had been thoroughly searched. As he rushed to open the door to check, he heard someone calling his name from behind. That person was Ji Yong. He threw all of Old Seo's illegal money on the ground and poured gasoline over it, preparing to set everything ablaze. This action drove Old Seo into a rage and he charged at Ji Yong recklessly. After being knocked down by Ji Yong, he hurriedly got back up and asked if the boss had sent someone to eliminate him. To his surprise, Ji Yong told him to apologize to the grocery store owner's family. Realizing that it wasn't the boss who wanted him dead, he breathed a sigh of relief and even felt he still had a chance. Therefore, Ji Yong decided to burn the most valuable thing to him right in front of him, stripping him of his last glimmer of hope. Watching all his money and documents being incinerated by Ji Yong, Old Seo despaired and turned his furious gaze toward him. Even until his death, Old Seo never suspected that this was a match in which he was completely overpowered. It could even be said that his opponent regarded him as nothing more than prey, simply enjoying the moment of the hunt. Since Ji Yong stained his hands with the blood of evil, he had never considered stopping. These criminals loved to exploit the loopholes in the law, so he wanted to make them realize and regret the leniency the law had shown them. That leniency was the very path leading them to hell. In front of the innocent children whose lives he had taken, Old Seo was found dead the next day. The manner and condition of his death were identical to the previous case. In an instant, the police could no longer control public opinion. Countless people had become fans of the one who maintained order. Some even went as far as to dress up as vigilantes at night, using similar violent methods to punish those who deserved severe retribution. Compared to Ji Yong, these individuals were even more ruthless. This led to an increase in crime rates in South Korea and unprecedented challenges to police authority. The public began to doubt the existing laws in South Korea. With citizens questioning the judicial system, those in power could no longer sit idle. Their first thought was not how to improve the laws and protect the vulnerable, but rather to assign Detective Jo Hyun, a tough and seasoned investigator from the National Investigation Team, to apprehend the vigilante. Detective Jo Hyun is not someone to be underestimated. Not only is he as strong as an ox, but he can also defeat 10 men at once. Each punch he delivers has a high chance of being lethal. He can even tear apart iron doors with his bare hands, instilling fear in countless criminals. For offenders, Detective Jo Hyun has only 2 approaches. When he speaks softly, he gives the other person a chance to converse politely. However, if they refuse to cooperate, he resorts to methods that are even more ruthless than those of thugs. He is willing to take a life to extract information. The reason his superiors assigned Detective Jo, a well-known violent investigator, to the case is that he, like Ji Yong, once aspired to be a judge who used violence to punish evil, but harsh realities have forced him to learn how to bow his head to advance in his career. Thus he understands the vigilante and believes he will definitely capture him, unaware that Ji Yong is already targeting his next victim. Late at night, a delivery driver working overtime was knocked down by a truck that ran a red light. However, after getting out of the vehicle, the driver not only failed to help the victim but also appeared irritated by the situation. Even more despicable was the way the driver instinctively glanced around to see if anyone was witnessing the scene while the injured person lay there gasping for help. After confirming that no one was around, the driver got back in the truck and unexpectedly accelerated in reverse, running over the victim once more. The driver's intention in doing this was to compensate for the incident quickly to avoid having to pay for the lifetime care of someone who might end up in a vegetative state. Ultimately, this serious case was ruled by the court as a result of the driver's operational error, leading to a sentence of just over a year in prison. Afterward, while tracking the driver responsible for the accident, Ji Yong discovered that he not only showed no remorse for the incident, but also mocked the victim's family, claiming they were a bunch of parasites trying to extort money. For someone who regarded human life as worthless, it was only natural that someone would come to punish him. Just as he was soaking in a public bath, an unexpected assailant suddenly pushed him underwater. Strangely, this person was wearing a mask, which was clearly not Ji Yong's style. Moreover, this attack left no useful clues for the police, who were curious about how the vigilante managed to destroy all nearby surveillance cameras. However, not long after, two incidents of criminal punishment were exposed by the media. A self-proclaimed vigilante had punished and executed a criminal using tactics strikingly similar to Ji Yong's. What was even more shocking was that after dealing with the criminal, he not only openly provoked the police, but also declared to the entire society that these actions would never end if the justice system did not change. This action was clearly a public challenge to the South Korean legal system, forcing authorities to take the law seriously. In other words, if the law was not amended and improved, the vigilante would not disappear. Faced with this situation, Ji Yong was also quite confused. However, he could sense that the imitator seemed to share the same will as him. Similarly, as the one creating public opinion about the vigilante, Mi Rio was also a supporter. Therefore, her words were aimed at highlighting the incompetence of the authorities. She shouted that no one talked about the trampling of the rights of criminals. The issue did not lie with the media or the vigilante. Rather, it was with the legal system, which had too many loopholes. This is why the vigilante emerged. Since this situation arose, not only had there been more imitators of the vigilante, but even criminals with previous convictions living in hiding were living in fear. As a result, they not only begged for protection from the police, but some even voluntarily returned to prison, feeling that it was safer there. Despite the confusion among the people, there were still some who, unaware of the seriousness of the situation, wanted to take risks. An elderly woman, after collecting recyclable materials, accidentally blocked the path of a BMW driver. The driver, suffering from intermittent explosive disorder, reacted with a fit of rage and accelerated straight toward the woman. After getting out of the car, the driver continued to berate the elderly woman arrogantly. Witnessing this scene, the owner of a fruit shop angrily approached the driver to question him. However, the driver maintained his condescending attitude, leading to a physical altercation between the two. This time, the BMW driver had picked the wrong person. He was no match for the fruit shop owner. Enraged, the owner gave the driver a beating he would never forget. However, when the police arrived, they took the driver away and also brought the fruit shop owner to the station for questioning because the driver wanted to sue the owner for assault. Even though the police knew the owner had acted justly, they had to comply with the law as it was. Not long after, Ji Yong saw on the news that the elderly woman had passed away due to not receiving timely medical attention. He couldn't believe it and then felt a surge of anger because this poor woman was a neighbor he had always helped. He knew well that she had worked hard collecting recyclables from dawn until late at night to pay for the medical treatment of her bedridden husband. Now, not only had she been killed by that scoundrel, but she was also being hunted down by the brother of that scoundrel to seek a settlement. For that alone, Ji Yong could not forgive these two vile brothers. So he quickly confronted the brother and gave him a beating he would never forget. After teaching that scoundrel's brother a lesson, Ji Yong sneaked into the hospital to warn the scoundrel that it would be best for him to pray for the judge to give him the harshest sentence. If not, when he got out of prison and crossed paths with Ji Yong again, it would be the moment he descended into hell. After completing a series of punishments, Ji Yong disguised himself as a doctor and smoothly passed by the violent officer Jo Hyun, leaving the scene safely. When Jo learned that something had happened in the patient's room, he immediately chased after the doctor he had just seen. However, when he reached the lower floor, he found nothing. Not only that, but all the surveillance cameras in the hospital had been hacked and destroyed. Ji Yong thought he had finished his punishment and was about to leave when suddenly someone threw a patient down from the upper floor. When he turned around, he realized that this person was the same scoundrel from before. A female reporter who was lying in wait immediately rushed in to take action. Even Jo couldn't believe it, and only Ji Yong noticed someone who looked just like him climbing down the side of the hospital. Ji Yong quickly chased after him and discovered that this person was driving an ambulance to escape. Seizing the right moment, Ji Yong rushed up and opened the vehicle's door. He hitched a ride with this person to a deserted parking lot. The individual seemed incredibly happy, but after calming down a bit he approached Ji Yong claiming to be a fan and hoping to collaborate with him. If that wasn't possible, he offered to be Ji Yong's assistant instead. However, Ji Yong was uninterested in the offer and directly attacked the man. This person was quite agile, dodging all of Ji Yong's attacks. Faced with this awkward situation, the mysterious person continuously explained to Ji Yong that he was an obsessed fan. Not only could he help Ji Yong out of trouble, but he could also assist in capturing even more notorious criminals. However, Ji Yong was not interested in any of this, as the justice he sought was not simply about taking down the enemy. He wanted to demonstrate the principle of karma that the law failed to achieve rather than just killing someone. If it were merely about the hunt, he would be no different from a serial killer. The mysterious person's appearance unintentionally shattered all of that, therefore their ideals were completely different, leading to a confrontation between them. After an intense battle, Ji Yong with his superior skills emerged victorious, but he didn't want to know who the other person was. He only warned him not to imitate his methods anymore. This left the mysterious individual very disappointed, as his idol showed no curiosity about him. However, the identity of this mysterious person was truly surprising. He was Gang OK, the vice president of the DK Corporation. Unlike Ji Yong, who had faced hardships, Gang OK was born with a silver spoon in his mouth but had dreamed of becoming a hero since childhood. Therefore, his way of handling criminals was often similar to that in American movies, directly eliminating them. However, due to his identity, he could not reveal himself to the public. Until Ji Yong appeared, he had become an obsessed fan of the vigilante and secretly helped him clean up the aftermath. Thus, in some of Ji Yong's previous cases, the surrounding surveillance cameras had been handled by Gang Ok's people. This was one of the reasons the police could not investigate. Now that he knew Mi Rio had damaging evidence against Ji Yong, he personally went to the television station and lied, claiming to be a friend of the vigilante. He requested Mi Rio to hand over the evidence, arguing that they should protect the warrior acting for justice because they both shared the same goal: to experience the pure joy of fighting crime. One was doing it to create viral content, while the other genuinely wanted to challenge the judicial system and change unjust laws. Therefore, both were willing to stand by Ji Yong's side. Meanwhile, through several cases and the methods used in the crimes, Joe felt that the perpetrator had an extremely strong capacity for resistance, acting in a very secretive manner and likely being someone within the police system. However, he noticed that from their encounter that night, there was no officer in the current police force as passionate and righteous as Ji Yong. Therefore, he brought documents to consult a professor knowledgeable in criminal psychology for assistance. Unexpectedly, Joe encountered Ji Yong once again. This familiar feeling made Joe keenly aware of the situation. However, he did not confront Ji Yong directly but had already made a decision in his heart, so he continued to seek out the professor, who informed him that the students helping him build the criminal investigation system were two students he particularly valued for their strong sense of justice. It was clear that Joe had also guessed the identity of the order keeper. Joe said directly to the professor, "If the order keeper is really a police officer, what will you do?" This statement left the professor stunned. If the perpetrator was indeed a police officer, it would undoubtedly be the greatest disgrace for the justice system. Once the matter was exposed, it would not only stir public opinion but also cause a massive uproar. After all, if even the police do not trust the law and resort to taking justice into their own hands, it further proves that the current justice system, even its own nemesis trained within it, does not trust the system, leaving the public completely disappointed in the country's justice system. Therefore, Joe came up with a plan: to find an unfortunate person among the imitators of the order keeper to serve as a scapegoat, thus bringing everything to an end. However, the premise was that no one could know that Ji Yong was the true order keeper, so the first thing he did was hint and warn Ji Yong. "I know you're the order keeper. Don't continue to recklessly commit crimes. If you keep causing trouble, I won't be able to protect you." Not only that, to erase any traces that Ji Yong might leave behind, Joe went to a store to retrieve the surveillance camera. It was known that the camera had been taken by the thug's brother. Therefore, Joe went alone to their hideout. This part showcases Yosh's monstrous nature. He charged directly into the midst of the thugs, fighting with a terrifying strength like a wild beast that could send shivers down anyone's spine. Moreover, he used only one hand to tear apart the iron door, demonstrating his extraordinary combat power. Upon witnessing this, the thug's brother was left stunned, no longer daring to say anything at all. At the same time in the classroom the professor was curious about the injuries on Ji Yong's face, but Ji Yong remained silent. Just then a teacher unexpectedly appeared in the classroom and said that there was a police officer outside who wanted to see Ji Yong. This surprised everyone present. When they went outside they learned that a girl had come with the police to thank Ji Yong for his brave actions the night before when he had chased away the thugs on her behalf. This strange reason left even Ji Yong feeling bewildered. No one knew that all these arrangements were made by his enthusiastic fan gang. Okay. He had set up for the girl to appear to help Ji Yong out of a tight spot. Following these events and the successes they brought, Ji Yong suddenly felt that fighting alone was not a long-term strategy. Therefore he proactively contacted the mysterious man and exposed the fact that he had been monitoring his phone. After that he agreed to meet with Gang OK to talk with him. Next the major character they were targeting finally appeared. This person was the chairman of an investment company. On the surface his company was involved in the trade and entertainment sectors, but in reality it controlled the servers of many illegal gambling websites. They used the entertainment industry as a front to trade in flour. Old CEO whom Ji Yong had dealt with earlier was just one of his underlings. Following old CEO's sudden departure, two of his subordinates became greedy and ran off with the money and goods. However, they couldn't escape the grasp of Chairman Kim. Therefore he ordered his men to prepare his favorite punishment to deal with these traitors. The most brutal method he often employed was the pig punishment. After an hour of command, a pack of hungry fat pigs was released. They charged toward the scent of blood and frantically tore into the two men. The entire space was filled with the sounds of their horrific screams and the pigs tearing flesh. Chairman Kim's method of eliminating enemies was as brutal as that. However, during the time Ji Yong was silent, Mi Rio and her senior were investigating a case when they discovered that the whistleblower had taken his own life at home. Both knew very well this was not a suicide, as the victim had contacted her senior the day before and claimed he would provide them with important information. Yet unexpectedly he mysteriously passed away at home the following day. Based on the information the victim provided before his death, the two went to the address he had given. After breaking into a warehouse, they were astonished to find that inside this sprawling factory covering thousands of square meters were servers used for a chain of illegal underground industries. While the two were filming to gather evidence, they suddenly heard the sound of a door opening. A mysterious man walked in searching and quickly discovered the two of them. In an effort to save Mi Rio, who was fleeing, her senior bravely tried to block the mysterious man, but as a result he lost his life to the enemy's blade. Thanks to her senior's sacrifice, Mi Rio successfully escaped by driving away. When she reported to the police and returned to the scene, the entire warehouse was empty. All the servers had been cleared out and there was not a trace left of her senior's body or blood. At this moment she realized that the opponent had clearly planned and set a trap for them. To honor her senior's sacrifice, Mi Rio decided to fight to the end and publicly reveal the footage she had secretly recorded. She also directly targeted the mastermind Chairman Kim and the crime lord behind him. Chairman Kim, who was still unaware of what was happening, turned on the TV after receiving a call from the crime lord and watched the news. He angrily realized that things had gotten complicated. Mi Rio not only exposed his past wrongdoing but also revealed the identity of a senior inspector and the honorary principal of the police academy. Her actions were not only intended to be seen by the public but also to be noticed by the one who maintains order, Ji Yong, who despises evil. Especially when Ji Yong learned that the wicked criminal was linked to the principal of the police academy, he could hardly contain his anger. The justice he always upheld was being manipulated by a bunch of corrupt people. Therefore he was determined not to let this go. As for Mi Rio, the one who bravely exposed the truth, her program was ordered to be halted by her superiors and she was kidnapped by Chairman Kim's men. However, just when the kidnappers thought they had succeeded, a strong man approached. This timely figure was Joe. Joe had anticipated that Mi Rio would be in danger after the incident, and he once again advised her not to continue luring the one who maintains order to appear and complicate the situation. But she pretended not to understand, even teasing him about whether he didn't want to catch the one who maintains order or if he didn't want him to be caught. Joe quickly asserted that he would soon chain the one who maintains order. He aimed to prevent the situation from escalating and to quickly find a scapegoat for the one who maintains order. Joe used the name of a subordinate he had found as a clue and went alone to Chairman Kim's hideout, where he dealt with his enemies. This reckless group of criminals mocked Joe for coming alone, but they didn't know that this would be their last chance to speak. The last words they heard were Yo's warning that anyone who wanted to live should surrender quickly. Of course, none of them took this seriously because the numbers were too skewed in favor of Joe. However, Joe fought bravely and took down the gangsters single-handedly. After an overwhelming battle, Joe followed his plan by calling in officers to clean up and labeling these cruel criminals as the ones who maintain order. He also lied, claiming that the factory where people were killed using the pig punishment was the site of the maintainers of order's crimes. This was the fastest way to end the situation and destroy the image of the maintainers of order, turning them from heroes into a criminal gang. But the public has sharp eyes and the reporters are not foolish. They voiced their opposition to the police. Even Kim couldn't understand why his cold-blooded henchmen had turned into a group of maintainers of order, and it was clear that Joe was a subordinate of TAE. Why was he helping Mi Rio and ruining his plans? After doing all this, Joe thought everything would end, but unexpectedly Ji Yong refused to remain complacent as he wanted. He tracked down the supplier of flour to Lao Sio and seized the opportunity to take action while the man was about to commit a crime. Ji Yong beat him up mercilessly and grabbed his hair, forcing him to open the safe to obtain evidence of Kim's crimes. Soon after, the police received a report and Joe arrived at the scene. He recognized this as Ji Yong's work with a familiar method and no clues or surviving witnesses. This proved that the police had yet to catch the true maintainer of order who had disrupted Yosh's plans. This made Mi Rio more confident but infuriated Kim, as the henchman who was murdered was in charge of his drug trade records. The plan was ruined and Joe was extremely angry. Ji Yong didn't know this, so Joe would no longer show mercy. The chase between the two officially began. With Joe hot on his heels, Ji Yong no longer hid. After all, the opponent already knew his identity, so there was no need to run anymore. Looking at Ji Yong, Joe saw himself in his passionate youth. Therefore he wanted to give Ji Yong another chance, personally guiding him to achieve great things. However, Ji Yong felt embarrassed by this and even turned the question back to Joe, asking if he truly understood what justice was, and if he did understand, had he ever stood on the side of the underprivileged. Faced with Ji Yong's question, Joe was left speechless. Seeing Ji Yong filled with indignation, he recalled his oath under the national flag. However, as an outsider, Joe understood that Ji Yong's biggest mistake was his confidence in never being wrong. This is why he did not abide by the law, even challenging legal authority. If left unchecked, he would become a terrifying monster, posing a danger to society. Faced with Yosh's evasive response, Ji Yong couldn't contain his anger. In his eyes, Joe was no different from a corrupt cop. He wanted to rush in and teach Joe a lesson, but unexpectedly Joe was as strong as a wild beast. Ji Yong had no chance to resist. Clearly he was skilled, but Joe was even better, and with the added advantage of his physicality, Ji Yong had no chance of winning. But despite being knocked down time and again, Ji Yong still stood up to speak for all the marginalized and victims. He declared that even if he had to become a demon, he would become a demon that eradicates evil. Ji Yong's questioning left Joe unable to refute him. Afterward, Joe let Ji Yong go once again, wanting to resolve this pressing issue in his own way. However, he didn't expect that his superior TAE had suspended Joe from duty. Even so, Joe could only endure. He understood that this was not the right time to overthrow TAE. At the same time, even though Ji Yong was beaten and bruised, he was fortunately rescued by Gang OK. Upon waking up, Ji Yong learned that Mi Rio had been fired by TAE. He then asked Gang OK to use the money to establish a news studio so that Mi Rio could continue to monitor and report on the wrongdoings of Kim and TAE. Seeing that Mi Rio was still reporting, TAE was extremely angry, but currently they didn't have much evidence, so to TAE it was merely a nuisance. However, no one knew that after recovering, Ji Yong continued his investigation. He relied on previous records and discovered a church related to Kim, which was likely where he laundered money. Therefore he secretly entered the church and took down the man who was transferring money, copying all the criminal evidence onto a USB drive. After that, he sought out Gang OK and handed him the USB, asking him to pass it on to Mi Rio to continue the reporting. From this moment on, the two officially collaborated. However, Ji Yong understood that just having this evidence was still not enough to bring down TAE. Only by creating a shocking news story would things gradually move in the direction Mi Rio was reporting. Therefore, Ji Yong targeted the pastor who laundered money for Kim. This time, Ji Yong wanted to escalate the situation. The wolf in sheep's clothing had to become a sacrificial offering in this battle. He showed no mercy in sending the one who used God to commit these immoral acts down to hell. After the departure of the pastor, Kim and TAE felt like birds afraid of a bending branch. This was because the pastor had too much evidence of their secret dealings. Therefore, TAE demanded that Kim deal with the situation immediately, and Kim assured him that he would clean up all those involved within 5 days. As the enemy had yet to identify who the real enforcer was, their first target naturally became Mi Rio, who always had the information. But at that moment Joe, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly appeared. He warned Mi Rio not to play with fire or else no one would be able to save her. However, Mi Rio was not afraid of such threats. Ever since she began investigating the case, she had disregarded her own life. Seeing that he could not persuade her, Joe felt helpless. Just as he was about to leave, a mysterious assassin appeared. Joe truly was a strong man, like a fierce beast. The ruthless assassin gained no advantage at all. Just when Joe was about to take down his opponent, another ferocious and larger beast charged in to attack. It turned out to be Chigu, the muscle-bound assistant of the seasoned assassin. Although Chigu was strong as an ox, he lacked Yosh agility. After a series of ineffective attacks, Joe quickly identified his opponent's weakness and used it to counterattack. Just when Chigu was getting beaten, the seasoned assassin finally returned. The surprise attack left Joe unable to move. 2 against 1 was a disadvantage Joe could hardly overcome. Even during his counterattack, he was struck by the assassin's sneak attack to his side. Wounded in multiple places, Joe still did his best to hold his own against both opponents. However, after fending them off for a while, Joe no longer had the strength to stand. Seeing this, the seasoned assassin smugly praised Yosh's strength for a moment before preparing to send him on his way. But just at that moment, someone suddenly arrived to save Joe in time. The one who came was Ji Yang. Just as it seemed the two sides would plunge into a fierce battle, the sound of police sirens echoed from afar. The seasoned assassin and Chigu had no choice but to quickly retreat. Joe was then taken to the hospital for emergency treatment and even made it onto the news. But what was strange was that the video of him being attacked was recorded by a witness hiding nearby. This entire operation was orchestrated by Ji Yang. He wanted to turn Joe into a victim to stir the wrath of this beast, making him one of them. This would surely give them an advantage. It was indeed a case of one person's misfortune being another's fortune. Tae faced pressure from his superiors, who demanded that he quickly deal with Kim's mess. Otherwise, if they got involved, no one would survive. While Kim was angrily berating the incompetence of the seasoned assassin, he was unexpectedly met with a retort from the opponent. The assassin not only refused to obey orders but also threatened to hunt Kim down if he continued to talk back. At that moment, Kim realized that this seasoned assassin had never been on his side, and the only person who could control him was Tae, who had colluded with him. What surprised Kim even more was that Ji Yang had discovered the location of his server. He not only set fire to destroy the place but also took down all the employees inside, then seized all the money and evidence of wrongdoing. This left Kim completely stripped of his most profitable industry. Later, Ji Yang even donated the ill-gotten money to an orphanage. After obtaining direct information, Mi Rio continued to report on the case, once again targeting Kim and Tae. Seeing everything spiraling out of control, Kim realized he had utterly failed. Thus he shamelessly begged Tae for one last chance. However, the opponent directly told him that their superiors had decided to abandon him. Nevertheless, if Kim were to sink, he would ensure everyone went down with him. He knew that the money he had earned over the years had been used by Tae to fund his superiors' election campaigns, so there were certain things he was aware of to some extent. However, the cunning fox Tae had already anticipated this trick from the opponent and lied that, as long as Kim obediently served a few months in prison and waited for everything to calm down, he could get out and continue. If not, it wouldn't just be about whether he could live peacefully in the future, but whether he would even survive at all. Seeing that Tae had spoken so ruthlessly, Kim felt helpless and resigned. He furiously blamed his incompetent subordinates for the situation. Not wanting to sit idly by and accept his fate, he decided to do his utmost before going to prison to garner some merit in front of his superiors. Thus he targeted the person maintaining order. The first victim was the director of the orphanage. After receiving a gift from the enforcer, she became the first target of the thugs' revenge. The second target was Mi Rio, who was always in contact with the enforcer. Consequently, the thugs gathered in large numbers, wanting to break through from here. Sensing the impending danger, Mi Rio not only didn't think about running away but also installed multiple cameras in her office, intending to use herself as bait for everyone to see. After a thorough search and destruction, Mi Rio was still captured by them. Just when Mi Rio was being forcibly taken away, Gang OK, who had been entrusted by Ji Yang, suddenly appeared and confronted them directly. As the fight was about to end, Mi Rio finally saw the true face of the enforcer. They didn't expect Gang OK to be so fierce. Even Mi Rio couldn't believe that her boss Gang OK was the very enforcer she had been hoping for. Meanwhile, Ji Yang was on his way to provide support. When he saw Mi Rio being safely escorted by the police, he felt relieved. Mi Rio was taken to the police station but did not disclose any information about the enforcer, leading the Special Task Force captain to suspect that she was an accomplice of the enforcer. Unfortunately, without evidence they could not hold Mi Rio any longer. After returning home, Mi Rio reflected on Gang Ok's words to her. "My friend is in danger. If something like this happens again, don't risk it alone. Just run away, we still have much to do." This indicated that the enforcer was someone else and Gang Ok was merely a collaborator. Just as she was calming down, the lights in the house suddenly went out. After learning about the situation, Ji Yong felt that things were becoming increasingly complicated. He and Gang Ok discussed their desire not to drag any innocent people into this matter. Therefore they needed to devise a perfect plan. Previously Joe had investigated the new Special Task Force captain who would undoubtedly target Ji Yong as well. They needed to ensure that the enforcer was linked to the police academy. From there they would conduct a search of the entire academy, leaving no room untouched, not even the principal's office. Ji Yong had secretly planted evidence of Kim and Tai's crimes in Tai's principal's office. Before long the stern captain discovered the evidence and took it in front of Tae. For stubborn individuals like Tae, he preferred not to waste words, opting instead to make a phone call in secret from a corner. Just as the captain hurriedly took the evidence away, he was unexpectedly hit by a truck. After recovering, Joe learned that his friend had passed away and he was truly furious. Those high and mighty bastards completely disregarded the lives of their subordinates. No matter how high you climb, one word from someone else can make you fall. Therefore Joe sought out Ji Yong again. He understood that the plan to harm others using a borrowed knife was Ji Yong's strategy. After a debate about righteousness and justice, Joe could see the burning desire in Ji Yong's eyes. Ji Yong's determination moved Joe. At that moment Kim was handling matters when he suddenly received a call from the company. It turned out that Ji Yong had taken the initiative to break into his company. He demanded that Kim surrender Mi Rio and the transaction data. Otherwise he would not return the previous data. However, Ji Yong didn't know that Mi Rio was not actually in Kim's possession. Kim immediately thought of the person who could have done this, someone who also worked for Tae. It could only be the assassin Fang. Therefore Kim called Fang to express his intention to cooperate in resolving the troubles for his superior. Meanwhile, Fang was using extremely ruthless methods to extract information from Mi Rio, but he discovered that she was not only tight-lipped but also had nails as tough as bone. Therefore the best course of action at this moment was to cooperate with Kim to capture the person maintaining order first. However, before that Kim wanted to deal with a subordinate who had failed him multiple times. This once reliable henchman had caused Kim to fall into the passive position he was currently in. For those who were useless, Kim never showed mercy. Following Han's advice, Kim brought hundreds of henchmen to the designated arena. First, he had people control the entire surveillance center, then ordered everyone to monitor a man wearing a black hoodie. But as they waited all day, by evening when the match began, the men in black hoodies started pouring into the arena. This left Kim stunned. It was then that he realized tonight was themed around an electronic music festival. It seemed the opponent was smarter than he had imagined. At this moment, Gang Ok and Ji Yong had secretly infiltrated the crowd. Fang and Chigu were also escorting Mi Rio to the scene. Everyone recognized that the opponent was intelligent, yet they allowed Chigu, who only knew how to use brute force, to blend into the crowd to capture Mi Rio. This created an opportunity for Ji Yong. After successfully rescuing Mi Rio, the real plan began. Gang Ok appeared intentionally in front of Kim to lure the hundreds of henchmen lying in wait. Meanwhile, Ji Yong handed his phone to Mi Rio, asking her to stream live on the spot. He wasn't afraid to reveal himself and confront Chigu directly, because only this risky move could draw big fish like Tae into the water. However, Mi Rio was very skilled at controlling the angle, deliberately avoiding Ji Yong's face. When the live broadcast began, Joe finally couldn't hold back any longer. After putting on a bulletproof vest, he dragged two of Chairman Kim's henchmen who were being held captive and rushed to the scene. The scene was incredibly chaotic. Hundreds of people had been led by Gang Ok to the main battlefield. In an instant, a brawl erupted. Chairman Kim's henchmen attacked recklessly, striking anyone without concern. As a result, Chigu was stabbed multiple times. Seeing that the opponents were numerous and hard to handle, Joe drove into the fray. After crashing into Chigu, Joe got out of the car with two of his subordinates. He warned everyone that he was a police officer and anyone who dared to resist would face no mercy. The two subordinates knew well that compared to old Fang, he was the real monster to fear. Regarding their choice of sides, they believed they had made the right decision. Chairman Kim had lost all reason at this point and only wanted to take down the law enforcement officer and regain the evidence and data from them. He launched a fierce attack. Just as he was about to stab Ji Yong, a man in a black hoodie attacked from behind, saving Ji Yong. However, Chairman Kim unleashed all his fury on this mysterious man. After subduing Chairman Kim, Ji Yong approached to examine the situation and realized that this man was Son Wook, his close friend. It turned out that Son Wook had always known Ji Yong's identity and had helped him hide it, even silently protecting him. At that moment, a powerful police force arrived and surrounded the area. Son Wook, who was on the verge of death, said that he trusted Ji Yong's every decision, so Ji Yong should do what he wanted. Seeing Chairman Kim attempting to flee, Ji Yong immediately chased after him. Everyone was trying to escape. Old Fang, who was tailing Chairman Kim, wanted to take his life. As they chased deeper inside, Gang Ok told Ji Yong to go on alone while he would stay behind to block the pursuers. This also aligned perfectly with the personal heroism he had always desired. The cornered individuals immediately plunged into a brawl. Joe quickly appeared to join in and help balance the fight, so Joe would battle Old Fang while Ji Yong faced off against Chairman Kim. Clearly these were one-sided fights and the outcome was easy to predict. Joe and Ji Yong swiftly gained the upper hand over their enemies. Before long, Ji Yong and Joe had both subdued their opponents, but just then the door suddenly closed. Applause erupted as Tae made his entrance. He looked smugly at the scene of the dog-eat-dog struggle. Chairman Kim thought his savior had arrived and immediately tried to win Tae's favor, stating that he would soon resolve everything. Seeing that Tae wanted to silence him, Old Fang instinctively dodged. After firing an entire magazine, Tae no longer wished to linger with them and directly opened the water release valve, trying to drown them right there. Meanwhile, Tae leisurely reloaded his gun and shot at those in the water. However, due to his poor shooting skills, they found an opportunity while he was changing bullets and began to swim upstream. Ji Yong furiously punched him without holding back. Just as Ji Yong was about to finish off Tae, Joe climbed up and stopped him. He hoped Ji Yong could trust him one last time and hand Tae over to the law. No one expected that Old Fang had quietly climbed up, so he jumped into the fight with the two. While they were fighting, Tae recovered and grabbed the gun to attack them. He fired at each of them one by one. Ji Yong, who tried to rush at him, was also shot and fell to the ground. This directly drove Joe into extreme rage. Tae, terrified, tried to fire at him, but the gun was out of bullets and now he would have to face the wrath of his own subordinate. No one expected that in the end Tae would be finished off by Joe himself. Old Fang stubbornly tried to attack Joe but was immediately countered and stopped by Ji Yong. In the end, Ji Yong's close friend sacrificed his life. He was posthumously awarded the title of hero and received a special medal from the Prime Minister. As for Tae, even though he had lost his life, his superiors painted him as a brave warrior who fought criminals until his last breath. He was even posthumously given the title of honorary police chief, all because his superiors and the corrupt judicial system didn't want their scandals exposed to the public. If the whole world knew that the South Korean judicial system had rotted to its core, would the people still trust the police who protect them? Would they still trust their country? Would they still believe that justice and righteousness exist in this world? It was at this moment that Ji Yong realized how small he was in the face of such a colossal truth, and that justice in South Korea was nothing more than the name of a comedian. Upon graduating, Ji Yong said nothing. He no longer believed in the medal he wore on his chest. Everything had become meaningless to him. And thus the movie comes to an end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting upcoming films.